Hi there and welcome to this 2-minute tips video. Today we're going to be looking at the options around storage folders and file names in the Nikon Z series cameras. As our series of 2-minute tips videos has progressed, we've got more into some of the more detailed settings, perhaps the ones we overlook and that we leave at default because they're not necessarily related to image quality, but they're there to help us with perhaps our workflow. Storage folders and file names is one of those, and I've chosen to cut it down into two different videos. In this video we'll look at the default settings and how it's structured, and then in the next video we'll look at some ideas for using it to help streamline or make our workflow more efficient. So storage folders and file names is about controlling how the camera names files and stores them in camera. You'll find these two options in the shooting menu. They're on the first page and they're the second and third settings down. If we start with the shooting menu option, you've got rename, you've got select folder by number and select folder from list. Before we dive into the settings, let's take a look at the default approach that Nikon have built into their DSLRs and mirrorless cameras to naming folders and file names. So if we look at the folder and file name structure and we start with the folder naming approach, what you'll see is that it starts with the folder number, which is 3 numbers. By default it starts at 100 and it increases by 1 every 10,000 images you take, and it keeps going until it gets to 999. The second part of the folder structure is the folder name, and this is made up of 5 characters. By default it's set to NCZ _6 for the Z6 and _7 for the Z7. So that stands for Nikon cameras Z6 and Z7. And then we've got individual file naming. At the beginning of this we've got 3 custom characters, and by default these are set to DSC. You'll also see that if you've got the color space for JPEG images set to Adobe, you'll have an underscore before the 3 custom characters, and if you've got it set to sRGB it will be after the 3 custom characters. Now we've covered the color space in a previous video and I'll put a link to that above. If you need to change it, you'll find it on the second page of the shooting menu and it's the 4th option down. After the 3 custom characters and the underscore in the file name, you'll then find 4 numbers which are camera controlled, and those go up in sequence for the number of images that you've taken. The file name obviously then has a file type attached to it: JPG for JPEG, NEF for Nikon RAW, TIFF for TIFF, or .mov or .mp4 for movies, depending on what settings you've got for the type of file output you're creating. So as we'll come back to in the next video, there is some latitude for adjusting some of these elements of the folder and file names. You can adjust the folder number, you can adjust the folder name, and you can adjust the custom file name elements as well. So let's go back into the menus and look at the storage folders option again. So you've got rename, and this allows you to go in and change the folder name. Now that's the second part, the 5 individual characters of choice that are by default set to NCZ _6 or 7, and you can just change that to anything you want. If you change your mind and you want to revert to the default, when you've got the keyboard on the screen to rename the folder name, if you press and hold the delete button, the one with the little bin, rubbish bin, trash can on it, then it will come up with an option to reset to default. Now one thing to be aware is if you rename the folder name, it won't go back and rename existing folders. It will only do it going forward from when you change it. The next option is select folder by number. Now what you can do is you can go in here and you can select an existing folder either on the card in the camera or create a new folder on the card. And you do this by scrolling up and down on the different numbers on the screen. To the left of the numbers, if there's a folder in existence already, you'll see a little folder icon, and if this is empty, then the folder is empty. If it's yellow and partially full, showing 1 bar, then it has files in the folder already. And if it's got 2 bars in the icon, then there are more than 5,000 images in that folder already, or there's a picture with number 9,999, so it's full. Finally, we've got Select Folder from List, and if you go into this option, it will display all of the folders that are already on the card in the camera, and you can select one to use to shoot images or movies to. So that's the options within Select Folder. Let's quickly look at the file name options, which is one down in the shooting menu. And what we see here is this is where you can change the 3 letters at the beginning of the file names. And whereas in the folder names, if you held down the delete button, it would revert to default, it doesn't do that in here. So if you want to go back to the default, you have to retype in DSC. So that's a quick explanation of the default structure and settings for folders and file names in the Nikon Z series and some of the DSLR cameras. One thing to know is that if the camera gets to a position where it thinks it will reach folder 999 and file 9,999 with the next movie or image you're shooting, the camera does disable the shutter release, and at this point you'll either have to select a lower numbered folder or reset the naming structure. Also, be aware that if you've got a large number of different folders on a card, that this can slow down the startup time for the camera. So I hope you found this video useful. There's quite a lot of different settings and you have to think about them all in combination. So I hope you found it useful. As always, if you did, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and you'll be notified of other 2-minute tips videos. Do take a look at the back catalogue of other 2-minute tips videos. There's a lot of functionality that we perhaps overlook in our modern mirrorless cameras. And as always, I look forward to seeing you in a future video.